The night seemed to envelop everything in its unsettling silence. The prison, usually a cold and hostile place, seemed to almost breathe that evening. The men locked inside expected nothing different from the usual monotony, but something was about to break the cycle of immutable routines. It was 2:47 a.m. when it happened. A familiar yet out-of-place figure appeared in the corridor of Block C. Elena, a guard known for her integrity and unwavering respect for the rules, advanced in silence, her face rigid and devoid of emotion. The security cameras captured her every step, but strangely, no one seemed to notice the anomaly of her actions. It was as if fate had manipulated that moment, granting her unconditional access. She stopped in front of cell number 14. Her hand, steady yet tense, inserted a key into the lock. Click. The door opened with a metallic sound that echoed down the deserted corridor. No procedure, no authorization. It was clear that Elena was acting on her own, breaking every rule she had sworn to uphold. From inside the cell, a hoarse and sarcastic voice broke the silence. "I wasn't expecting a late-night visit, least of all from the model guard. To what do I owe the pleasure?" The man sitting on the bed was Marco, an enigmatic prisoner whose past was shrouded in terrible accusations but lacked definitive proof. He had been locked up because society didn't know what else to do with him. His reputation as a quiet and elusive man made him a mystery to everyone, except Elena. She knew Marco was hiding much more than he had ever revealed. "Stop talking," she said, her tone sharp. "I'm not here to exchange pleasantries." Marco stood up, stretching with deliberate slowness. "Ah, so there's a mission. Interesting. Tell me, what made you break all those nice rules you love so much?" Elena stepped forward, closing the door behind her. "We don't have time for your games. There's an innocent girl out there, and she's about to be killed. I know you know something. And I want the truth, now." Marco looked at her, raising an eyebrow as if assessing the seriousness of the situation. Then he chuckled. "Interesting. You came here thinking I'm some knight with secret information? Well, I hate to disappoint you, but I have no idea what you're talking about." "Enough with the lies," Elena retorted, her tone now filled with anger. "I'm not here to ask, I'm here to get answers. I know you're involved in her disappearance. Don't pretend you don't know." Marco's smile slowly faded. The atmosphere in the cell grew heavier, as if the very air were thick with tension. He approached Elena, his face serious. "You know that if I talk, it's not just her life at risk. It'll be mine, and maybe yours, too. There are things you can't understand, Elena. This world isn't what you think it is. And you have no idea what it means to watch someone die because you decided to stay silent," she replied. "You have one last chance. Speak." For a moment, Marco seemed to hesitate. Then he turned, walking slowly toward his bed. "You want an answer? Fine. But be ready, because once you know the truth, there's no going back." Elena watched Marco intently, as if trying to read in his eyes the fragments of a truth he was reluctant to share. For a moment, the silence in the cell was almost deafening, broken only by the distant ticking of a pipe. Then Marco sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor with an expression that hovered between remorse and fear. "There's a warehouse," he began slowly, as if each word weighed like a stone. "At the edge of the city, in an abandoned industrial area. That's where they keep anyone who's seen too much, anyone who's considered a problem. The girl is there. But it won't be easy to reach her." Elena tilted her head slightly, her voice a mix of determination and challenge. "Why? Who's behind all this?" Marco lifted his eyes to hers, the corners of his mouth tightening in a bitter smile. "People with more power than you can imagine. They're not just criminals. They're businessmen, politicians, people who don't make headlines but pull all the strings. The girl, she saw something she wasn't supposed to see. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now, she's a disposable pawn. And what's your connection to this? Elena asked, her tone icy. Why do you have information no one else seems to have? Not all secrets stay buried, he replied, leaning against the wall of the cell. Once, I was one of their trusted men. I did their dirty work, transported things, people, without asking questions. But one night, I overheard something. Something I was never supposed to hear. From that moment on, I became a problem. They framed me to silence me, and now here I am. Alive, but only because I'm more useful in here than out there. Elena stared at him, trying to process his words. And you let an innocent girl get caught up in all this without doing anything? Marco laughed bitterly. Do you think I had a choice? I'm no hero, Elena. I'm a survivor. But you've decided to step into this game. It's not a world where the good guys win. Once you start fighting, you either bend, or you break. I don't need a morality lesson from you, she shot back. Give me the address. Marco paused for a moment, then pointed to a crumpled piece of paper near his bed. Elena stepped closer and read the handwritten coordinates. Her stomach tightened. She knew the area, a maze of abandoned buildings, perfect for anyone looking to hide. There's a main guard, Marco added, his voice lower. A guy they call the Hound. He's ruthless. He won't stop at anything to protect that warehouse. And trust me, he won't be alone. If you want to save the girl, you need to move quickly. But don't expect it to end well. Elena folded the paper and slipped it into the inner pocket of her jacket. If any of what you've told me is false, I'll be back. And believe me, I won't be this kind. It's not false, he replied, staring at her with an intensity that surprised her. But let me tell you one thing before you leave, once you set foot in there, you'll lose control. The truth won't set you free. It will make you a target. Elena didn't respond. She opened the cell door and walked away, her steps echoing through the empty corridors. The determination in her eyes was unmistakable, but deep down she knew Marco was right. She was about to step into a game she didn't understand, and the rules were far from fair. The wind was freezing as Elena left the prison behind. Sitting in her car, she gripped the steering wheel, mentally replaying Marco's words. Her instincts told her there was still much he hadn't revealed, but she didn't have time to doubt. Every passing minute could be the girl's last. She started the engine and headed for the warehouse, her heart pounding. She was defying everything she had learned in her job, the rules, the protocols, her own safety. But she knew she could never look herself in the mirror if she didn't do everything in her power to save an innocent life. The warehouse awaited her. And with it, a truth that would change everything. The warehouse loomed in the darkness like a menacing monolith. Elena stopped the car at a safe distance and stepped out, shrouded in shadow. The industrial zone was deserted, silent, with an air of abandonment that would send chills down anyone's spine. But Elena had no time for fear. She approached the building through a side passage, gripping her flashlight tightly. Before entering, she took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. Every fiber of her being told her she was walking toward a precipice, but there was no other choice. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of narrow corridors and shelves filled with dusty crates. The air was stale, heavy with a metallic and oppressive scent. Elena moved slowly, her steps silent, ears straining for the faintest sound. Then she heard it, a muffled whimper. She froze, holding her breath, and followed the sound. She found her in the farthest corner of the building, tied to a chair, her head bowed, disheveled hair covering her face. Elena quickly approached, kneeling beside her. "Don't worry, I'm here to help you," she whispered, starting to untie the ropes. The girl slowly lifted her gaze, her eyes swollen with tears and fear. "It's almost over. Everything's going to be okay." But before she could finish, a harsh, authoritative voice cut through the moment. "Don't move. Elena turned sharply. 3 men had appeared out of nowhere, armed, their faces hidden in the shadows. Their leader, a massive man with a scar running across his face, stepped forward. It was the Hound. "Brave guard," he said mockingly. "Did you really think you could just walk in here and take away our little secret?" Elena stood slowly, placing herself between the girl and the men. "I don't want trouble. Let her go, and no one will get hurt." The Hound laughed. "Trouble? You brought it here. And now you'll pay for it." The other men moved in sync, circling her. Elena knew she was alone against them, but she couldn't back down. She grabbed a metal pipe lying nearby and readied herself to fight. The first man approached, but Elena reacted swiftly, striking him in the side. Another tried to grab her, but she ducked, sending a crate crashing into him. However, the Hound wasn't so easily dealt with. With brutal strength, he shoved her against a shelf, causing her to lose her weapon momentarily. "You don't stand a chance," he growled, grabbing her by the collar. "I have more than you think," Elena shot back with a faint smile. A sudden sound filled the air, police sirens. Blue and red lights flashed through the broken windows, and the Hound froze. "Damn it," he roared, releasing Elena. She quickly regained her footing, grabbing the metal pipe again and striking him with all her strength. The Hound collapsed to the ground, while the other men tried to flee. But it was too late. Police officers stormed the warehouse, blocking every exit and arresting anyone who tried to escape. Outside the warehouse, Elena stood catching her breath as the scene unfolded. The girl had been taken to safety in an ambulance, and the officers were questioning the detainees. The police captain approached her, his face marked by a mix of concern and respect. "That was a dangerous operation, guard," he said. "Do you have any idea who you've exposed?" Elena nodded slowly. "These men are just pawns. Behind them is something much bigger." The captain sighed, looking at her seriously. "And are you ready to keep going? Because once you step into this web, there's no turning back." Elena stared at the dawn lights beginning to color the sky. She was tired, wounded, but not defeated. "I never thought about turning back." That night was over, but Elena knew it was only the beginning. The dark world she had glimpsed wouldn't let her go easily. But with a life saved, she had found a new strength. She would fight. Always. What would you have done in Elena's place? Would you have broken the rules to save a life, or would you have stepped back? Let us know in the comments. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, leave a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more suspenseful stories with twists and turns. Don't forget to activate the notification bell to stay updated on new releases. Your opinions and comments are important to us. Write down what you think and what you would have done in this situation. See you on the next adventure.